Good morning. So I guess I'm the sorbet between the starter and the main course, which we'll hear later on. So I did present at the annual conference, and I focused very much on an adoption framework. And I'm not going to dwell on that too long this morning because I really want to get to the bit that I'm excited to talk about today, which is de-frictioning, giving you examples, making this real. How does AI actually show up in work practices? But very briefly, we have a framework, which it won't be a surprise to you to learn that we're a consulting organization if we open on that. So we have a framework, and basically, when people come to us, they're trying to answer three questions, which is, what can AI do for us? Where in our organization should we use it? And is it going to work? So really, the framework works its way, and it's very similar to a lot of the points that Stephanie made. And I'll just give a crash course in this. But the first point is organizational preparation. So it is the leadership team. Have they any personal experience of using AI themselves? A relevant point of context is those aha moments. One of the really useful things to do is a research piece on short, medium, long-term impacts of AI on our business model, on our actual practices and processes in our sector. Because you paint a tapestry, a background picture of what's happening in the industry if we do nothing. So that's, you talk about the urgency factor. That really creates it. And the whole point of this phase is to have leadership be vocal, that they see AI as another form of innovation. That protects the innovators and gives that psychological safety that you referenced. If you don't do these things, you see a lack of urgency in the organization, the sponsorship isn't clear, there's not a clear position. That makes employees a little bit nervous or concerned if they see the potential. At the second stage, it's got to be business first. So forget about AI for the moment, which is an unusual thing for an AI consultant to say. You've got to look around the business. What are our bottlenecks to growth at this point in time? You're creating a map of areas to play in for AI, because why wouldn't you? If AI can solve any significant current growth bottleneck, then it's creating a case for itself. Okay, and that feeds into a long list of the areas within the business, the use cases and so on. That becomes that governance structure that Stephanie mentioned, or part of that governance structure, and it can be a transparent thing. And the last one is answering the will it work question. And this is all about mini proofs of concept. This is actually choosing an area to deploy AI for the first time. It could be generative AI or machine learning. You all agree what that measure of success is going to be out of that experiment. These are like mini science experiments. And this is the first point of contact between your real data and an AI technology. So you're measuring AI's efficacy against the data you have right now. Don't be distracted by this. We need to get all our data in a row before we do AI. There's two parts to that. Number one, you've got the data you have today, so that's where you're starting. Number two, if you deploy a proof of concept, you find out your data isn't sufficient, you can synthesize the data. You can create what the ideal data set looks like and test, does that make things any better, before you go off and invest in that corrective action. Okay? So put those all together into a series of activities that you do. So if you follow this framework or your own variation of it, what you have is a process that effectively builds trust and transparency around AI, demystifies it. You're making sure you're targeting areas that are actually going to make a difference if successful. And you're providing proof that AI is going to work through proof of concepts. Now, if you don't do this, you see things like there's no clear mandate from leadership. A lot of pilots are started but go nowhere. So that's our methodology. Look, I'm not going to dwell on that today. If you want a copy of that, just by all means contact me. The bit I want to talk about today is my favorite area of AI, which I call de-frictioning. Okay, so basically it's de-frictioning work, decisions, and access to information. And for people that use AI on a daily basis, like this is the point where you're getting the value. So I'll take you through a couple of examples on this. So the first one, it's a very simple example. Think of these as generic kind of examples that you can think about in your own organization. It's de-frictioning access to information. So this was a hedge fund. They had a very expensive database of company reports and information and all these news feeds. They had a bunch of analysts who were everything from technical all the way down to not technical at all. And what we did effectively was just take a version of ChatGPT, we put it in front of this data set and allow them to have conversations with the data. So you don't need to know database programming, you don't need to know a report generator, you literally can think of questions, and as you can express the questions, you can then get back answers from this enormous data set. So a research analyst might think of a couple of questions on potential investments, they form that question, the LLM comes back and graphs the information or tables it or whatever. And what they do then is they can turn those into alerts. Okay, so you're defrictioning the access to the information that they already own. It's making the last mile easy. Okay, a very simple model, and that can be deployed on any data set within your organization. Okay, just make it useful. I heard a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to a podcast and I heard somebody say, it's not like the amount of information on the internet has changed. It's not quite true, but people had to access it through Google. Before you had to do a search, you had to click into documents and so on. But if you use ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, you're just able to bypass all that. You're able to get to the answers. So the information hasn't changed, but the way you access it in a useful way to answer your questions has. Okay, the second example, this is defrictioning work, and this is one of the most fun projects I've done this year. This was a bike rental company, pan-European, and they had mechanics. And maybe you can relate to some of these stories now with your construction background. They had mechanics who were good at what they did, but they did not write down anything. They didn't record what parts they were using when they repaired bikes. So that was the point of friction. And this wasn't down to the individuals. This is an operation across many different countries. So it wasn't a cultural thing. It was just these guys are busy. They want to repair bikes. They don't want to do anything else. So we created a voice-driven solution. We looked at a couple of things like barcoding. You're taking out a piece of stock to repair a bike. You can barcode it. We looked at AI, camera-driven things. Too much friction, because when you're taking photos, you've already got one hand there. You've got to wait for the image to be processed. But a voice session, everybody talks. So we created this bot. You can see it there in the background. We're having this conversation of repairing a bike and we'll replace the brakes. If there's more than one potential set of brakes for that bike, it'll say, well, did you mean the Shimano set or the generic set? And over time, it allows the mechanic to collect the perfect record of the work done. Okay. So that's defrictioning it in the actual environment that it's been used. And then they can do all sorts of wonderful things. This is actually a bottleneck. This is a major business bottleneck for the job. They're not capturing. They know how much stock is missing at the end of the year, but they don't know why. They don't know what bike models it's been assigned to. They don't have total cost of ownership. So the CFO is getting a lot clearer information from there. But on the other side, we also have metrics on the conversation. We're measuring how many mechanics engage with the app, how many times they have to be asked follow-up questions, how many times they got sassy with the app and cursed and expressed frustration. So we can measure those moments, so you can actually see how those conversations are going. And I don't know if you can see, but we train the bot to be a little bit sassy back. So there's frustration events, and if you think things like, no need to get titchy, Mr. Titchy Pants, and if I had robot arms, I would slap your face. So it is giving back what it's getting. Okay, but that's just the best example of handling defrictioning in a work environment. Another one, which I mentioned at the conference, it's a furniture manufacturer. They were palleting everything manually, and they wanted a palleting solution. That's quite an algorithmic solution to do. So you have an order that comes in, you calculate how many pallets it's going to take to ship that order. So what we did was we top and tailed it with AI, and the guys on the floor already had this IP in their heads to variable degrees, okay? And obviously depending on the conditions of the day, the CEO used to mention paracetamol was his biggest productivity tool in that organization. I'm not sure what he meant. But effectively when the order comes in, the system says this is going to take 5 pallets, here's a picture of the pallet, and then that information goes back into the manufacturing sequencing to say, by the way, we're going to pack it in this order, so make sure it comes off the lines in this order. But then the guys at the end are the eyes and hands of the whole process, and they go, well, that pallet plan didn't quite work, and here's why. And that feedback goes back into the loop, and comes into the next packing recipe recommendation. So it's accumulating the IP of the guys on the ground, and it's creating consistency in decisions. Okay. Another one, which kind of combines all of these, is it's defrictioning access to information, but I think it's also a couple of these concepts baked in. So this was a financial metrics company. They wanted a bot that would allow their customers to talk to the reports that were on the system. So very similar to the first use case. So we put in a bot, language interpretation. But the extra ingredient in here was these guys did financial metrics. So they take all your company data and they crunch it down into a set of numbers that tells the leadership team in the business, how's their business tracking, now sales is starting to vector this way, etc. What we actually did was we added IP of the lead consultants. So we interviewed the consultants, we did workshops, we had sales demos and customer engagement demos, and we added that IP into the bot. So the bot could basically replace their consultants having to sit in a room each month with customers and explain the value in the information that that customer was already paying for. Now what's different about this, so you can look at this model as partly software. The bot's integrated into the system, it knows about the reports and the metrics and so on. But how that company continues to expand the value of this is they update the IP. When the consultants come back in, they've learned some new insight, they can add that into the library. So this is pretty impressive stuff in that you don't need software development to make your software value better. You now just need to keep updating the IP, and that's in there. Okay, so I guess what we've actually done this morning then is just to give you guys real-world examples to make this tangible. Where's this stuff being used to actually defriction access to information, make work easier, and make decisions more consistent. And in going to these events and learning these case studies, the thing I'd say to you guys is you're actively trying to develop your own context around AI. You're trying to learn where it's possible. You may already have much more information on how AI can be adopted than your own leadership team. So, so fair play on you for coming to these events and enduring these kind of presentations. So a little bit about leading edge. So there's a range of services that we provide on the AI side. We've talked about some of them this morning: discovery, proof of concept, and implementation. Leading Edge have been around for 30 years, and they started in lean transformation and training. And it's funny, it's just one of those things that they actually have so much in common. If you take away, you talk about all the hype around AI, if you take away all the hype around AI, adopting AI and doing a lean transformation effectively set out to do the same thing, which is to improve how we operate, improve our processes or efficiency. Although nobody runs from the room screaming when you announce you're going to do a lean process review, so we still have work to do on the PR side around AI. That's at some of the clients at Leading Edge, some of the areas we've done the work, and that's it. Thank you very much.